Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to take a look at the 7 most successful archetypes in the early days of Hearthstone's Rise of Shadows expansion. So if you're looking to climb to Legend anytime soon here, the meta is of course constantly shifting still, but right now if you're looking for climbing decks, then these are 7 decks that you can take to Legend. First of all, coming in at number 7 is Bomb Warrior. It all really starts with Bomb Warrior in Rise of Shadows. Bomb Warrior was the first extremely dominant deck that came to the meta. The meta is always a little bit cyclical, so Bomb Warrior became the real powerhouse. So naturally the next thing is that people are starting to respond to Bomb Warrior. They play stuff like Mech Hunter to try to counter Bomb Warrior. But then Mech Hunter has other weaknesses, and other decks on the other hand are trying to exploit the weaknesses of that Mech Hunter. And so we get this rock paper scissors style gameplay where some decks are strong against others and others counter those, but they might in turn be weak to Bomb Warrior again. So Bomb Warrior was the thing in the early days of Rise of Shadows. What the deck does, the deck shuffles bombs into the opponent's deck. Clockwork Goblin shuffles bombs, and when bombs are drawn they explode for 5 damage. So you can shuffle a lot of bombs with this. Goblin shuffles bombs, Elect doubles your shuffles, Wrench Caliber shuffles bombs every time you hit with it, Bomber shuffles bombs. And you have Blastmaster Boom, which summons boom bots depending on how many bombs there are in the opponent's deck. So there's a lot of damage coming from this, but it's not very immediate damage. So this is a control deck. See, there's double brawl, there's double warpath, this sort of thing. It can take very long, very slow game, and then just let those bombs slowly grind the opponent out. This variant also includes Archivist Elysiana, which is a feature in most of the successful Bomb Warrior decks right now, so that Bomb Warrior is also comfortable going into a very long fatigue game. So Bomb Warrior has somewhat more damage than a regular Control Warrior, but it's also missing a little bit on those board clear tools, which makes it slightly more vulnerable to aggressive strategies, especially sticky aggressive strategies, like decks with mechs for example. Nonetheless, while the initial craze behind Bomb Warrior is winding down, it's still a powerful deck and it's still a legend capable deck. It's not the greatest climbing deck though, because games are pretty long with this one, so it's going to take a long time to climb and get those stars even if you have a good win rate. Coming in at number 6 is a very recent innovation. This is innovation from Cocosasa, it's Mech Paladin. And even though this Mech Paladin is a very strong counter precisely against Warrior, both Bomb Warrior and Control Warrior, it only entered the scene fairly late, so other counters had already been used a bit. It's an interesting mix between using secrets in the early game and these secret synergy cards to survive, and then gain value from the mechs. It even skips the eggs altogether and relies on Mechanical Whelp as the main death rattle minion. And then of course there's Kangor's Endless Army for the Resurrect Styrian Fordrin. So very traditional mid-range deck in some aspects, but an interesting hybrid between using secrets for the early game and then mechs for the mid to late game. The deck is especially good at beating warriors, but one of its other strengths is that it doesn't have any major weaknesses. Okay, it's not super good against stuff like Zulocks or Token Druids, but it's not bad against them either, so whenever you queue into a game with this deck, you always have a chance. And that has been kind of Paladin forte before as well. If you think back on the days of Even Paladin, one of the main strengths of Even Paladin was that it's never really bad. It might not be the best deck to beat other decks, so it doesn't have these matchups where it really crushes the opposition, but you always have a game in your hands. So if that's something you look for, then this can be a really good choice. Coming in at number 5 is Control Warrior. Surprisingly enough, Control Warrior actually rose after Bomb Warrior's initial interest, because Control Warrior is pretty decent against Bomb Warrior. It can do a lot of things against the deck. It can comfortably go for a very long game with Archivist Elysiana and Baleful Banker. It has Heckle bots for some disruption, it has lots of removal tools, it has a bunch of armor gain. it is just able to defend against that Bomb Warrior quite well. But Bomb Warrior still has its upsides against this deck, so it's not a completely one-sided matchup. And what Control Warrior has over Bomb Warrior is that because it's so good at removing and gaining armor, it's much better against these aggressive decks, Warlocks, Tempo Rogues. Bomb Warrior isn't exactly bad against them, but Control Warrior is better. And while it shares the same weaknesses as Bomb Warrior does, Mech Hunters, Mech Paladins, Control Warrior is slightly better at dealing with those threats, even though that might still fall a little bit short. Coming in at number 4 is actually my personal favorite deck, I suppose, at the moment, Mech Hunter. This is my own build of Mech Hunter, really loving it. It's great fun. Just mechs and death rattles and extremely sticky boards. And this sort of Mech Hunter is extremely solid against any kinds of slower decks. Bomb Warrior, Control Warrior, this just wipes the floor with those totally. Because that never-ending stream of mechs and death rattles is just so difficult for them to deal with. The weaknesses of Mech Hunter are against aggression. Token Druids, 2 Warlocks. They try to build up a board, you try to respond. And okay, if you hit your Secret Plan, Springpaw, Headhunter's Hatchet, and if you happen to get something like Vargot or Shaw to stick for a turn, alright, you're in great shape. But the other alternative is that you don't hit your early game, and the opponent, the token deck snowballs, and you're unable to come back. Still, there are still lots of warriors on the ladder, and this deck is extremely strong against warrior. And it's also tons of fun to play. Coming in at number 3 is Tempo Rogue. Tempo Rogue is currently the most popular tournament deck, and it's easy to see why. Tempo Rogue is another one of these decks that doesn't really have that many bad matchups. A really solid defensive Control Warrior can probably take it on, but other than that, Tempo Rogue feels like it always has a chance. And most of the time, its chance is a little bit better than what Mech Paladin, for example, is able to have. So Tempo Rogue doing Tempo Rogue things. You can build a huge Edwin Cleave with this, you can abuse your evil miscreants, you can get a bunch of lackeys, Hench Clan Tuck, powerful minion in the early game. Raiding Party can tutor your weapon for you, it can tutor some pirates for you. Waggle Pick, going face, can also be buffed. Can be a Shadow Step with your Leroy Jenkins. Just overall very aggressive, dangerous deck, just like Rogue decks usually are. If you let Rogue have something on the board, then you're always scared, and you should be. This particular list actually is probably the best Tempo Rogue list against Control Warrior. So it runs double Coldbloods, which makes it a little bit weaker against those aggressive decks, but it's still okay against them. And these Coldbloods give it just a little bit more game against Control Warrior. If you don't worry about Control Warriors too much, then this Coldblood could be replaced with Crystallizers, which would then improve the more aggressive matchups. Coming in at number 2 is Token Druid. Token Druid has been rising quickly over the past couple of days, doing what Token Druid does. It fills up the board with various kinds of tokens, then it makes the board sticky with Soul of the Forest, and then it just hits face with Savage Roar. Token Druid things. There currently aren't that many really aggressive decks in the meta, so very powerful aggro decks have typically been able to punish Token Druid, because Token Druid takes a while to set up that board and build up that board that cannot be removed anymore, after which they're threatening lethal every single turn. But there are no really powerful aggro decks right now to hold Token Druid in check. The best deck to hold this in check right now is 2 Warlock, which is also able to build a board of tokens very rapidly, and it does it faster than Token Druid, and it just doesn't let Token Druid have time to build up its own board and make them unremovable. And indeed, coming in at number 1, the best deck to play to hit Legend right now is 2 Warlock. It's a little bit ironic, because 2 Warlock, the worst matchups for 2 Warlock are Warrior decks. Bomb Warrior is quite okay, Control Warrior is pretty much of a nightmare. And when the whole Rise of Shadows meta really started with that Bomb Warrior, and then that started to get countered a little bit, and then in comes the 2 Warlock, which doesn't actually counter Bomb Warrior that well, but it just beats up on all sorts of other decks that do counter Warriors. All the most successful zoo builds at the moment are Magic Carpet zoos. Now this is a 1/6 minion that, when it's on the board, all of your 1-drops gain +1 attack and rush when played. So very heavily focused on 1-drops, Magic Carpet. Just start hitting those minions with rush and additional attack on the board and they can control it for you. Then you have Sea Giants coming in when there's lots of stuff on the board, some real punch. And if for some reason the game does go long and you can't push through, then Arkville and Rafam can turn all of these weak 1-drops into random legendary minions, so you have one more push attempt with those. There's also really sweet synergy between Rafam and the Solarium, so you can play Solarium, draw 3 cards, but then if you play Rafam, then those 3 cards become permanent cards, so you don't discard them, but you have 3 permanent random legendaries in your hand. Just giving this deck even more ways to get back into the game. That is what early Rise of Shadows meta looks like. It all started with Bomb Warrior, then there started to be counters to Bomb Warrior, then there started to be counters to these counters, which in turn can again lose to Bomb Warrior, and now we have the cycle going on. What is notably absent from these is pure combo decks, OTK combo decks. Those have not been very successful so far in this metagame. And that can largely be attributed to Bomb Warrior, because combo decks like to draw a lot of cards, Bomb Warrior likes to shuffle or a lot of destructive cards into the opponent's deck, so that's kind of anti-combo archetype by itself. So therefore we have this control mid-range type of metagame going on. The expansion is still young and everything is of course still going to be changing, but these decks, they are very strong right now and I'm sure they will stay viable also in longer term, even if some of them fall off from being top tier decks. And if you're looking to hit legend in early Rise of Shadows meta, then here are 7 good alternatives for you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more.